We're standing on the duplex soil here this morning, and we've got a very nice clay pan in rehabilitation terms, but our main problem here, when you look at the landscape, how can we fix it? So we've done a lot of research, and now we've come up with water ponding to break up this crust that we've got here, to make it shrink swell of a clay underneath, to bust this open. Now, by holding 10 centimetres of water on this crust, we can actually get this clay pan, as you can see here, back to utilising what rainfall falls on it. Instead of any rain that falls on it, just skates straight off. So we've got to get that into the surface and utilising what actually falls. So by the water ponding technique, we're just ponding 10 centimetres of water over virtually 0.4 of a hectare area, using a road grader to build the banks.
Well, we've been doing it for about 10 years. I bought the place about 30 years ago, and we did a bit of ripping here and there, and then we hear about the water ponding, and we sort of worked out what we were doing wasn't really going streaming ahead. We hear about the water ponding, so we get into that, and we've seen the success of the water ponding, and now we've done 10 years of it. Well, the water ponding, for a start, it collects the water, then it retains that water, and when it soaks in, the seed gets collected in the cracks, and you'll get more rain, and then that'll germinate, and that's how the process continually goes on. One of the most important things is get a surveyor in to survey properly. That's very important. Survey the banks. When you get them right, everything just starts falling into place, because if they're done right, very rarely you have much go wrong with them.
A couple of different methods of setting up the actual surveying side of a water ponding. We can use handheld gear operating from the transmitter, still using laser gear, which you've probably used for your shed or something like that to build. We've set up our transmitter, and it's levelled itself and it's spinning, and now we've got the marker hooked up, master's up, so we're right to go to do our grid survey. A few important tips with the actual survey and the construction. The survey, you start from the very top of a clay pan and work down the slope, and you can actually fit in your ponds a lot better. The road grader, come construction, he starts from the bottom of a clay pan and works up the slope. So he's never running into a bank. The quicker the grader can get around, the easier and cheaper the whole process is. If he builds from the top down, he's running into banks every leg, and that's very expensive. So just remember, survey from top down, construction from bottom up. Here is a typical example of a water pond configuration. The water pond bank length is approximately 210 metres, ponding 10 centimetres of water, covering an area of 0.4 of a hectare. In our construction phase, we've used a lot of different types of machinery. Everybody's got a Cat 12. We've tried those over and over, and we've found we just can't get the required width and height in the banks for what is needed. Other fellows have tried disc machines, we've tried opposing blades, every type of thing, but it's come back to the big 16 graders, the big horsepower graders. They are the most economical, and that's what you should be chasing down to do your construction.
See here, to get this correct position of this A-frame, we have to adjust our centre shift linkage. So to work out here, we put our centre shift linkage pin position to the second furthest pin out, so this fella here. And also your centre shift linkage cylinder, you want fully stroked outwards to the right to get the correct position of this A-frame. With the setup for this grader here, really cutting edges, it's important that you use the 3/4 thick cutting edges instead of the 1 inch. The reason for that, you'll get a lot better cut. As you see here, we're just doing our initial run on this first water pond. You want to win all your dirt from your toe of your blade, so this is down the further side, left-hand side of the machine, and you want your heel, the heel is this fella, just want it skimming on top of the clay pan. You don't want that to be digging in. So you see we've got our toe in here, so we want a bulk volume of dirt come across the blade, just enough so for it to start spilling over the back of this moldboard. And also in this position, you will need to have the wheels leaned over to the right, so prevent your whole machine sliding out to where your toe angle. And also it's important where the dirt placement is to your line. So you see this, our survey line here, you want the dirt placement right in the middle. So with our blade tilt, it's really important to get the right angle, as you'll get the most efficient dirt that way. So what I found is good baseline, tilt your blade tilt all the way back till it strokes out, and I usually go about 4 to 5 inches forward. And yeah, that's a good baseline. You can adjust it here and there when you're getting into the soil to get the right angle on that. But yeah, just start with that and you'll work it out. Also, it is important the position of your blade slide. Yeah, so what I work on, I like to position the outer edge of the blade here, so this fella, in line with the outer side of the wheel. With our wheel lean, it is important to have the correct position for your lean. For example here, so we're doing our initial run, we want our bank's over to our right here, so you want the wheel lean leaning into the bank, so that will help steer the machine, especially in a straight line and also around the corners. Just keeps it all balanced, the whole machine in the correct position. So here we're doing our initial run of this pond. So we come into the pond initially, we activated our diff lock. So you activate that in going a straight line with no load on the machine to prevent damaging anything inside your differential there. With ponding here in this 16G, we usually use second gear. Usually, yeah, it works out to be pretty efficient and also pretty easy on the machine, not being too hard, everything's working. Yeah, also obviously full throttle, so you want everything working full potential. So obviously, yeah, have the throttle all the way back. So you don't need to put your foot on, just use your throttle stick. When you come into the run, you will need to use your diff lock, and yeah, you will have to need that too for your machine to track correctly down this line of the pond here. Otherwise, you'll be forever fighting the rear end of the machine and we swapping all over the place. So with diff lock in, the machine will track straight, nice and true. As we're coming up this corner here, you can usually with this big sweeping corner, you don't really need to use much articulation, but sometimes it does tend to help. So just here, just straighten articulation slightly, just see how we go. So come this corner, once you get your toe level on the ground there, you shouldn't really need to touch it. So with our heel, we want to put your heel down a little further. That'll drag the machine around slightly. Because if you try and just steer the machine with your front wheels, it will just go in the opposite direction where you want it to go. So once you got your toe down, just adjust your right hand blade to lift cylinder, just enough on and off, just to drag the machine around. And also keep your blade full of that dirt. You always want that dirt spilling over that blade. So we're coming up to the end of the run here. So pulling up. At the end of this run, you want to stop and lift your blade up, disactivate your diff lock. And you want to prevent, so this will create a nice blocking method to the end of your bank. You don't want to drag your blade any further away, because that will defeat the purpose.
And this block that we've sort of built here is the grader driver's come round with the blade full, and he just lifts it up right at the end of a mark, and that just drops all the dirt in virtually just a straight block. Once the pond is full, to bywash, it just pushes up round this block, and it comes round onto this natural ground level and goes round into the next pond or down to the next pond, and can get into behind the bank, but it doesn't erode round this corner. It's just sitting on this natural ground level, and that's why that block just goes in there. And if we go to the other end of the pond, the actual block is on the inside when he's done the inside pass. So we've got a natural block on both ends. In construction, a very important note is when the grader is bringing that dirt round, following the tine marker, not to take the dirt past the end where the mark ends, because that'll straight away put more depth into the pond, and then we could look at breakages through the bank. And don't go past those two marks at the end, and don't drag the dirt past it. On the ends, he just comes out, does a quick reverse and straight back in. Not a great big circle that covers about 2 acres where he just chugs out in first gear, ups a gear, reverse, back in, and then you're back into that second gear to do the actual construction.
Or I find turning inside, you diff lock off obviously, so you get around the corner a bit easier, turn around. Wouldn't reverse, you can't articulate this way, you can't articulate to your left because our blade will hit our right hand tandem tyre. Just keep everything centered. So when you walk the machine, just try and position all your blade assembly before you get into the run. So just try and keep everything as efficient as possible.
This next step will show you how to build a water pond. First we'll need to rip the soil, and then the construction will begin. Construction involves making an outside pass, followed by an inside pass, and then completing the bank with a second outside pass. On most clay pans, ripping is required because the soil is so compacted that the grader is unable to win enough dirt for bank construction. This will also increase the life of the grader by having it ripped. Where this occurs, rip approximately 1 metre either side of a survey line. In this example, the first rip line has already been put in, and the grader is in the process of doing a second rip. A rip through the centre of a pond is also recommended to aid water infiltration and to create a niche for seedling establishment. But it's important not to rip under the water pond bank. Now this is his first pass on the outside for the water ponding bank, and he's coming down on the outside. You can notice that full blade, absolutely full of dirt. He's got that leading toe in that rip line, just inside that front wheel, and he's just throwing that full blade out onto the actual survey line, which you can see right in the middle where the dirt's going.
So we come into our second run here of this pond. So this is our inside run. The most important thing here is your dirt placement. So really here you want to build your bank width, majority. So as what I like to do, I just want the dirt to start spilling just on the edge of that crown of your initial run, and you don't want that dirt to spill over it. So all your dirt, you want it on this side just to get your width. So we're coming up to the corner here. So you should actually lean the wheel the other way, leaning into your left, and with your toe tends to drag the machine around, and giving a bit of articulation helps also as well. And just keep it in mind, just your dirt placement too. On those really tight corners, sometimes it's easy to turn your diff lock off, as you can get around it. These big sweeping corners like this, there's no problem using your diff lock. So come right here, straighten out your articulation, preparing for the final. Pull your blade out. So at the end here, it's very important to pull up. So the end of the run, pull your blade out. When you're stationary, the reason for this is to get the correct blocking for the end of the pond. Really important, as you don't want to drag your blade throughout the pond, as it cause it. And yeah, diff lock. So when you go around the corner, make it a bit easier to turn around. So we're coming on to our third run here. So this is our final stage of this pond. Yeah, much the same concept. So as here, we got our left-hand cylinder, so our left cylinder fully stroked down, so getting our maximum material from the bottom of this gully. And also obviously heel up. And so with our dirt placement, we don't want the soil to run over the edge of the inside bank. Biggest thing, if you're seeding the inside, you don't want to cover that seed. And yeah, so you're pretty well just getting your extra height and your dirt all on this outside. So you don't want double domes or anything, you want one single dome for the correct structure.
In the construction phase, there's a few key little issues there with the drivers to make sure that they take out a full blade of dirt. If they only take out half a blade, then it goes into another run. Now we're looking at a fairly hefty cost for that construction. So if they've got to have the blade full every time that they're going round in those 3 passes, they can't just do a half-hearted pass. They must be chock-a-block full of dirt to get that required 2 metres width, base width, and that 60 centimetres high in minimum bank height. So what we're showing here is just a completed bank after our 1 run on the inside, 2 on the outside, and we were after that 2 metres, and we actually got 2.2 metres in base width in your bank, and we're well over our 60 centimetres high. So we're just demonstrating there, if you can get that 1 metre either side of that cone, that's getting your base width of over 2 metres in width. The bank should be puffy, have rounded sides and with a good cone on top, not a concaved peaky bank that has no dirt in the sides. One of the key aspects to water ponding is the management, the follow-up after the construction's been done. You've virtually got to get a crust over your bank. If you let your stock in the paddock straight away after construction, they can destroy that bank within 24 hours. They just get on it, push their heads through it, tramp all over it, and you've spent a lot of money getting it to that stage, and you haven't even given it a chance to go.
We actually spell the country for that wet, and some of it we spelled the next wet, and then we've lightly grazed it, but spell it. Spelling is one of your biggest assets you can have to get the new seed out.
Key points you must remember with water ponding: get your survey done first, get it done correctly, get the marks on the ground in the right position, bring in the bigger graders, And if you want to go that extra step, do the seeding, and then within that 5 average years, you're going to get good results.
Well, my advice is if you're thinking of doing it, talk to your local LCDC, NRM Rangelands, talk to your local ag department, then they will give you advice. Even if you can't afford to do it, you can't afford not to do it. So pick small areas out to give it a go and see what the results are. And I think most people would be amazed at what they would see.